Hello and welcome to my workshop. So today we're going to be taking this Class 2 comp truck a friend of mine has, putting an interior in, a roll cage on the back, a couple little random things here and there, and getting this thing finished up. Alright, so let's get started. This truck belongs to a friend, and he needed some help with making an interior and a roll cage. The truck is for SORRCA and is a Class 2. The main idea for these is to meet the bare requirements of the rulebook and make them as light as possible. I start off with 2 bucket seats that are recently made for a Jeep Scrambler build. These are vacuum form, which makes them sturdy but light. There isn't much room for an interior since the battery, ESC, receiver, and transfer case sit right in the middle. A piece of flat styrene was roughly cut to shape so I could hold it up to the body and mark for final trimming. This will become the floorboard eventually. I marked the location of the seats so they line up with the steering wheel and will allow the roof to go back on. Later on, this will not be such a big deal, but we'll get into that later. The rear of the Jeep, which started out as a 4-seater, had a giant hole cut in the back so the shocks could poke through. I was trying to figure out what was the best to cover this with. After looking around for inspiration, I just decided on a simple wooden box. The structure of the box is made from 30,000 styrene, covered with a thin veneer of dollhouse hardwood flooring. I found this stuff online, and it was a lot thinner than I expected. Since the goal is to reduce weight, this happened to work out in my advantage. The dollhouse hardwood flooring I typically get is bonded to paper and is much thicker. This stuff had a sticky backing and the paper was meant to pull away. This made it easy for me just to stick on the planks to the styrene box. I dug through my box of 3D printed scale items and found 2 shifters and a handbrake lever. Holes were drilled into the floorboard so they could be mounted up after everything was painted. I looked around to figure out how best to make a roll bar in the rear. There's a slot in the roof, and I decided to put the tubing into that slot and then bolt the rear down. An M3 set screw was inserted halfway into the tubing to act as like a pin. These were then brazed in place to prevent them from moving. The rear section slants down and is attached with scale metal supplies tabs. A plan for some cross braces was made and then I contacted my friend. Turns out our wires were crossed. He wanted to ditch the cab and the doors from the Jeep. He also wanted the windshield and roll cage lowered down to the 4 3/4 inch minimum from the SORRCA rules. It took me a bit to think about what I was going to do, but slowly a new plan was formed. It started with removing the doors and roof. I had the pins in the tubing, which means I could slot another piece of tubing on and braze it into place. This extra length allows me to reach up to the windshield. I also needed a support in the middle since the cab is now gone. A washer was brazed to a piece of tubing and inserted into the hole where the cab slotted in earlier. The other end, after getting a slight bend, is brazed to the cage. A piece of tubing was brazed across the front to match the contour of the windshield. 2 runners were brazed to match the windshield angle and then just rest upon the dash. The only connection is in the rear, but the center posts hold firmly and the front will keep the piece from being pushed down in a rollover. I wasn't able to get the 4 3/4 inch like he wanted, since the seats would have poked through the roll cage. After cutting down the windshield, it sits right at about 5 inches, which is close enough. Since the windshield wasn't cut down dramatically, and the thing is pretty close to square, matching up the pieces was fairly easy. I just needed to make a slight pie cut in the lower piece, and then gently bend it in a bit. The 2 pieces of the windshield were solvent glued back together, and a styrene brace was placed along the joint. This was then stiffened up with a bead of CA glue. Nowadays, there aren't many projects I can finish up in one day. This was a lot of fun, even though I had a curveball thrown in right in the middle. There are a bunch of fun projects coming up, but until then, I'll see you on the rocks.